Welcome back. This is the first episode of Semi-Educational Slop Garbage in Between Japan Part 2 and Silicon Valley. And today we're going to be talking about the American Belt Region's Geographical Cultural Atlas. I messed up geographical, but this is just the intro, so I don't really care. Let's move on. So this belt is the Borscht Belt. This one is Jewish cultural belt, only cultural belt that doesn't exist anymore. It is also the smallest cultural belt. It formed in the early 1920s due to a rise of anti-Semitism in Americas, obviously very bad. And what essentially happened was Jewish entrepreneurs started creating resorts in the Catskill Mountains, primarily Sullivan County and Ulster County of New York, because they were not allowed anywhere else. So large amounts of East Coast Jewish Americans started moving to these areas for vacations, and it really started to thrive from the 1920s to the 1960s. This is when it was getting real big. There were over 500 resorts, 50,000 bungalow colonies, and 1,000 rooming houses throughout the region. So a lot. And for more than 45 years it was around. It was providing not just leisure but like community, because remember, Jewish people were being discriminated against a lot during this time when it was created. So this was a sort of place for them to convene. Not only that, but this is actually where stand-up comedy originated in its modern form in the Borscht Belt. Very impressive. Influential figures also vacation here: Danny Kaye, Floyd Patterson, Lyndon B. Johnson, just to name a few. And it started to decline by the 70s, fully gone. By the 90s, there were still, a few, but today it's mostly dissipated. The legacy does still live on, obviously. You can, some examples. And, most of the hotels have been converted. There's rehab centers now, meditation centers, Orthodox Jewish hotels, so still within the Jewish community, and religious summer camps. Now, for the name itself, Borscht Belt does derive from the beet soup popular among Eastern European Jews, and it was coined by Abel Green, who was an editor of Variety. Next belt is the Bible Belt. The Bible Belt is southern United States, parts of Missouri. They're all Protestant, lots of Protestants. That's why it's called the Bible Belt. They're mostly evangelical, some Baptists, but all Protestant. So, why is it the Bible Belt? Well, that term was first coined by American journalist and social commentator H.L. Mencken, who used it in 1924 while covering the Scopes monkey trial in Tennessee. So he referred to this area as the Bible Belt because, the whole Scope monkey trial thing, like evolution versus creationism, so it kind of makes sense for the name. This region has been described as the most socially conservative across the United States due to substantial impact of Protestant Christianity on politics and culture. The Bible Belt is characterized by higher church attendance, more evangelical Protestant denominations, and greater emphasis on traditional religious values compared to other parts of the country. And according to research, Americans identify Alabama and Mississippi as the core of the Bible Belt, while at least 40% of Americans also say Tennessee, South Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, Kentucky, and Georgia are entirely within this region. Now, religious demographics do confirm that this regional distinction does exist, with states in the West and New England having the highest percentage of atheists and or non-religious individuals, while Bible Belt states have the lowest rates. Tennessee does hold the highest proportion of evangelical Protestants at 52%. And while not always, this does tend to translate into political and social conservatism, with Bible Belt residents typically, emphasis on typically, not always, electing conservative politicians at both state and federal levels. Now we're doing the Black Belt. This is the belt my grandparents are from. It's called the Black Belt for one of two reasons. Reason number one, black soil. Reason number two, black people. So we're going to be focusing on Alabama's Black Belt just because there's more information on the Alabama Black Belt than the Greater National Black Belt, but the map does display the Greater National Black Belt. Now, the Alabama Black Belt encompassed 17 counties: Barber, Bullock, Butler, Choctaw, Crenshaw, Dallas, Greene, Hale, Lowndes, Macon, Marengo, Montgomery, Perry, Pike, Russell, Sumter, and Wilcox. And geologically, it refers to the wide swath of dark, nutrient-rich soil that extends across south-central Alabama between the Georgia and Mississippi state lines, hence Black Belt. But again, there's also a very large population of African Americans, due to the fact that prior to the Civil War, half of Alabama's slaves were held within the Black Belt region. Now, this agricultural prosperity due to slavery did make Alabama's secession movement, very obvious. It was one of the richest regions in the country at the time. It is not anymore. It's one of the poorest now. Now, factors that cause this include the poor land management, natural disasters, the Great Migration, economic changes. A lot of things occurred in Alabama, and the Black Belt's now one of the poorest regions, no longer one of the richest. Funnily enough, even though the Black Belt was a lot of slaves did exist in the Black Belt, it's also where the civil rights movement occurred. Many Black Belt towns and cities, Tuskegee, Marion, Selma, Haynesville, Utah, Montgomery, probably all known for the civil rights movement. That it used to be slavery capital, and then it became civil rights capital. The Cotton Belt is basically overlaps a lot with the Black Belt, but this one encompasses more states than the National Black Belt does, just because cotton, very cotton. Now, the states in the Cotton Belt actually collectively produce over 20% of the world's cotton, very productive, and it plays a crucial role in maintaining America's top status in global cotton production. Now, while there are many things that do contribute to the gains that have occurred for cotton, planted acreage continues to be by far one of the most major, largest factors in this. Now, the acreage devoted to cotton production has shown remarkable variability throughout the region's history. Like, for example, from 1970 to 2016, it was fluctuating a lot, going from like 7 million to 16 million over only like a couple of years within that range that I listed. Now, they do plant a lot of crops other than cotton, corn, and grain sorghum being the two main ones. That being said, all three crops have displayed positive trends over time, and they are influenced by multiple factors, many factors, multifaceted, but it is still overall cotton. So it's called the Cotton Belt for a reason. You get my play on words there, for a region. Now, the Sun Belt, these are the sunny states. It encompasses 18 whole states, all in the lower half of the United States, because that's where the sun is. As someone who lives in the northern United States, well, Midwest, I can confirm, there's not a lot of sun here. So this expansive region has emerged as an economic powerhouse. Number one, a lot of people live there. And number two, a lot of companies invest in the cutting edge industries are there. Electric vehicle manufacturing, semiconductor production, AI, all that stuff going on in the Sun Belt. For example, just to look at a couple of states, Georgia had a $5 billion investment by electric car manufacturer Rivian. Arizona attracted major semiconductor manufacturers, even some out of the country. And, these are investments that have created pockets of just robust economic activity within the Sun Belt. And so it's making them very wealthy while the rest of America is perishing. Like I said earlier, a lot of people live there, so I'm going to talk about that. The reason why is because there's job opportunities, better weather, and, the quality of life is just better. It may not be affordable, but it's still better. So that's why a lot of people move there, but that also indirectly strengthens the labor market, which makes it even more enticing for more people to move there. So you just get more and more movement. It sort of loops itself. That's the Sun Belt. Now we're going to talk about the Rust Belt, which is the belt that I live in. This is the belt that used to be popping off. Then major industry decline happened. Everyone left. Some people stayed. The people who stayed became poor. So, like I said, the Rust Belt encompasses areas that once formed the heartland of American coal production, steelmaking, and automotive manufacturing. Throughout the 20th century, these industries flourished but began to decline because manufacturing processes were outsourced overseas where it is cheaper, and to the South where the Union basically doesn't exist. Because of these major shifts, all of us who were dependent on these economies basically collapsed. Cities like Cleveland, Horrid, Detroit, I live there, Buffalo, Horrid, Pittsburgh, experienced dramatic population decreases and major unemployment. For example, Michigan had 15.5% unemployment rate in 1982, significantly higher than the national average, which is 10.8%. While this basically ruined the Midwest, ruined the Rust Belt, this manufacturing leaving the region. And recently, there has been a revitalization across the Rust Belt, though. There has been a revitalization across the Rust Belt. A lot of buildup has been going on, a lot of success. It's not as bad as it used to be. and things are improving for the Rust Belt. Sort of like a new technological resurgence, if you will. All right, so the Mormon Corridor. This was created by Mormons, obviously. It's known as the Mormon Cultural Region, the Book of Mormon Belt as well. If we want to make it a belt, it's the Book of Mormon Belt. And this is the area that was settled and basically built by Mormons, handcrafted by Mormons. They like built this whole thing in the 1800s when they were like exodus. They were forced out of the rest of the United States and they just built their land up. This is like Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, even parts of California and Nevada. Now, these settlements were strategically established for agricultural production to access essential resources needed by the growing population. Again, this was the 1800s out in the desert. They needed to strategize, which they did very well. Salt Lake City, Utah itself does have the largest Mormon population in the United States because it was built by Mormons. It literally was built by them. It was their own country, their homeland. Like Mormons were there before the United States was there, which is impressive. By 1877, the church actually had 400 colonies with 4 distinct roles, and eventually this did proliferate into Mormons controlling much of this land, even when it became incorporated into the United States. Now we're going to talk about the Corn Belt. The Corn Belt is the last belt on the list, 8 of 8. Corn Belt, we love corn, right? Corn on the cob, corn bread, boiled corn, popcorn, corn mash. The Corn Belt emerged as a continuous region of concentrated corn production over 150 years in the states of Illinois, Canada, Kentucky, Missouri, Ohio, and Tennessee. First appeared in print 1882 when the Nation Summarized Weekly discussed discouraging accounts of the prospects in the Corn Belt. It gained academic recognition as well in 1903 when Harvard professor of economics T. N. Carver described it as a tolerably compact strip where corn is the principal crop. The Corn Belt is the most considerable area in the world where agriculture is uniformly prosperous because they farm corn. It's pretty difficult to mess up corn production. Over time, the geographical boundaries of the Corn Belt have shifted westward and northward, where increased corn production has developed in states such as Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota. The core regions of the Corn Belt today include the Grand Prairie of central Illinois, Des Moines-Low Glacial region in north-central Iowa and southern Minnesota, and the areas of irrigated corn along Nebraska's Platte River. Agricultural practices within the Corn Belt have obviously evolved significantly. Been devote considerable acreage to pasture, although farmers do still focus on corn and actually soybeans, shockingly. But the Corn Belt actually could be devastated by climate change if they're not able to make major technological advances with their agricultural practices. That's all the belts. Hope you enjoyed the video. Next video is going to be on language isolates. That's slop video 2 of 2. And then we get into Japan part 2. And we'll probably do some more interviews out there. We'll send the Rogue Pedagogue team back out to do some more interviews. Subscribe.